Hermes, son of Zeus and the Pleiad Maya, is one of the most versatile and fascinating gods of the Greek pantheon. Known as the messenger of the gods, he bridges the divine and mortal worlds with unmatched speed, cunning, and charisma. He is the god of travel, commerce, thieves, eloquence, cunning, and boundaries, and he even guides souls to the underworld, earning the title Psychopomp. Born in a cave on Mount Cyllene in Arcadia, Hermes displayed extraordinary cleverness from the very first moments of his life. According to myth, he invented the lyre from a tortoise shell just hours after being born. He also became famous for his cunning, particularly in stealing Apollo's sacred cattle, a feat that would cement his reputation as a god of trickery and ingenuity. Hermes' personality is paradoxical. He is mischievous but benevolent, sly but wise, and often acts as a mediator between gods and humans, or even between life and death. His speed, symbolized by winged sandals, allows him to traverse realms in an instant, making him indispensable to the cosmic order. Hermes' myths are not just tales of mischief, they explore intelligence, adaptability, the power of speech and negotiation, and the delicate balance between cunning and morality. Let's explore them in detail. Hermes' birth was unlike any other. Born in the hidden cave of Mount Cyllene to Maia, one of the Pleiades, he entered the world with a mischievous sparkle in his eyes. Even before he had taken his first breath, the nymphs whispered of his cunning and cleverness. Hours after birth, he crawled silently from his cradle of soft leaves and shadows, his tiny hands already trembling with curiosity. He discovered a tortoise and, studying its smooth shell, had a spark of inspiration. Carefully, he hollowed it out, making a resonance chamber, and stretched strings of ox gut across it. The newborn pressed his delicate fingers to the strings, and a sound flowed. Soft, melodic, and uncanny in its perfection. The hills seemed to hum in response. The nymphs gasped, and the mountain echoed the music. Later, while the nymphs were distracted by his music, Hermes spotted Apollo's cattle grazing in the distant meadow. A cunning grin spread across his infant face. Without hesitation, he reversed their hooves and led them through secret paths, leaving no trace behind. Hours later, when confronted by Apollo, the infant Hermes held up his lyre and played, soft notes floating in the air. Apollo's anger melted into admiration. "You have the hands of a god and the mind of a master," Apollo said, accepting the gift. Hermes smiled, already proving that intelligence and creativity could turn mischief into respect. The theft of Apollo's cattle is one of the most legendary demonstrations of Hermes' cunning. In the early morning, with the sun barely kissing the mountaintops, Hermes led the sacred herd away. To confuse any pursuer, he reversed the cattle's hooves, cleverly erasing their tracks. He even created decoy paths, weaving the animals back and forth across the hills. By the time Apollo discovered the loss, Hermes was laughing quietly in his cave. Apollo, furious, stormed toward the mountains, calling out the names of his missing cattle. When he finally found Hermes, the infant simply clutched his lyre. "Young Hermes," Apollo said, "how dare you steal what is mine?" Hermes responded with infantile charm and wit. "Brother, they are merely visiting. Consider it a gift, a chance to admire my music and ingenuity." Apollo, taken aback by both the audacity and the brilliance of the newborn, could not maintain his anger. He accepted the lyre, impressed by its beauty and sound. This act forged a lasting bond between the two gods, Hermes, the clever trickster, and Apollo, the god of music and reason, united through artistry and cleverness. Hermes' role as messenger of the gods was unparalleled. He could travel faster than the wind, slipping through forests, across oceans, and above mountains in the blink of an eye. On one occasion, Zeus needed to deliver a secret message to a distant king warning him of a forthcoming flood. Hermes descended from Olympus, invisible to mortals, gliding through clouds like a silver arrow. Along the way, he encountered challenges. Bandits sought to rob him, thinking him mortal. Hermes, smiling slyly, spoke a few words of persuasion, confusing them and sending them fleeing in panic. Rivers rose in his path, but he leapt across with the aid of his winged sandals. When he finally reached the king, he whispered the warning so gently that the mortal thought it a dream, yet it changed the course of the king's decisions entirely. In another tale, Hermes carried messages between warring gods, negotiating truces and sometimes playing subtle tricks that would turn conflicts to favor the gods' desires. His swiftness and cunning ensured that Olympus remained a realm of balance, order, and clever intervention. Hermes' role as psychopomp, guide of souls, is deeply moving. One tale recounts the story of a young warrior who died far from home in battle. Terrified of the unknown, his spirit wandered, lost and confused. Hermes appeared, a glowing figure in flowing robes with winged sandals shimmering like starlight. "Fear not," Hermes said gently, kneeling beside the trembling soul. "I will guide you through the shadowed paths, past rivers and guardians, to your final rest." The journey was treacherous. Shades of the dead whispered in lamentation, and the river Styx roared with a fury that threatened to sweep the soul away. Yet Hermes' steady hand and calm voice reassured the spirit. They passed Cerberus, the three-headed guardian of Hades, who sniffed and growled but bowed in respect to Hermes' authority. At last, they reached Hades' realm. Persephone and Hades nodded their approval as the soul passed into the underworld. Hermes' patience, intelligence, and gentle guidance revealed a side of him often hidden beneath mischief, wisdom, compassion, and the power to bridge life and death. After stealing Apollo's cattle, Hermes and Apollo engaged in a playful contest to test wits and skill. Apollo, radiant and proud, presented a riddle so complex that even the wisest gods hesitated. Hermes, barely a day old, listened carefully, tilting his head thoughtfully. Then, with a sly grin, he answered correctly, demonstrating not only intelligence but remarkable intuition. Next came the musical contest. Hermes lifted his lyre and played. Each note told a story: the rising of the sun, the flutter of birds, the rushing rivers, the laughter of nymphs. The mountains themselves seemed to hum in response. Apollo, listening, could not help but acknowledge the brilliance of Hermes' creation. "You are cunning and gifted," Apollo said, bowing in respect. "Even the youngest among gods can rival the mighty when intellect and creativity are combined." Hermes, mischievous and proud, smiled. This myth underscores the combination of cleverness, art, and diplomacy that defines Hermes' character. Hermes was not just a god of mischief, he was a protector and guide. One story tells of a merchant crossing treacherous mountains with precious cargo. Storm clouds gathered, wolves prowled, and the path seemed impossible. The merchant prayed to Hermes, and in the darkness, a silver light appeared, guiding him safely along hidden trails. In a parallel tale, Hermes aided thieves, not out of cruelty, but as a test of cunning. A clever band of outlaws, caught stealing, were allowed to escape if they demonstrated ingenuity and clever thinking rather than brute force. Hermes' intervention rewarded intelligence and taught mortals that sharp minds could achieve what strength alone could not. In every story, Hermes' dual nature is clear: he is a god of boundaries, guiding travelers and negotiators, protecting the clever and swift, and ensuring that wisdom, ingenuity, and diplomacy are valued above sheer force. When Hades abducted Persephone to make her queen of the underworld, the earth grew barren, and her mother, Demeter, despaired. Crops withered, rivers dried, and mortals feared famine. Zeus, seeing the chaos, called upon Hermes to intervene. Hermes descended swiftly from Olympus, winged sandals carrying him over mountains and through clouds. In the underworld, he found Persephone seated beside Hades, sorrowful but regal. "Hermes," she said, "I am bound here. What can you do for me?" Hermes bowed respectfully. "I am here as messenger and guide. I will speak with Hades and arrange what can be arranged." Negotiating delicately, Hermes convinced Hades to allow Persephone to return to the living world for part of the year. Yet he also ensured that the balance of the underworld remained intact. Persephone agreed to eat a few pomegranate seeds, binding her to the underworld for part of each year. Hermes then guided her safely back to the surface. The moment her feet touched the earth, flowers blossomed, rivers flowed, and Demeter's joy restored the harvest. Hermes' wisdom and diplomacy prevented disaster, highlighting his ability to mediate even in matters of life, death, and cosmic law. Hermes played a critical role in the story of Odysseus. On the island of Circe, the sorceress had transformed many of Odysseus' men into pigs. Hermes appeared to Odysseus in a dream, radiant and commanding. "Take this herb, called moly," Hermes instructed, handing him a small black and white plant. "It will protect you from Circe's magic. Speak wisely, and she may be persuaded to aid you rather than harm you." Odysseus obeyed. With Hermes' guidance, he confronted Circe. When she attempted to cast her spell, the herb's power shielded him, leaving Circe astonished. Hermes' intervention ensured not only the safety of Odysseus but also the eventual loyalty of Circe, who became an ally. This myth highlights Hermes' role as protector, guide, and divine problem solver, showing how his cunning and foresight assist mortals in dire situations. During Jason's quest for the Golden Fleece, Hermes appeared at key moments to aid the Argonauts. On one occasion, the sorceress Medea plotted against the heroes, threatening to sabotage their ship. Hermes, invisible to mortals, whispered advice and revealed hidden truths to Jason and his companions. "Trust not appearances," Hermes said. "Peril often hides behind beauty." When the Argonauts faced the dragon guarding the Golden Fleece, Hermes gifted Jason with a magic herb that lulled the dragon to sleep. Jason seized the fleece, and the heroes returned safely. Throughout the journey, Hermes' guidance exemplified the importance of intelligence, strategy, and quick thinking over brute force. Hermes was also revered as a god of commerce, negotiation, and clever exchange. One myth recounts how mortals struggled to trade fairly, often cheating or being cheated. Hermes appeared among merchants, teaching them the principles of fair exchange, contracts, and bargaining. He created coinage, introducing standard weights and measures, ensuring that transactions could be trusted. Hermes also taught merchants clever tricks for protecting their goods and negotiating with skill, showing that commerce requires intelligence, fairness, and foresight. This myth portrays Hermes not as a trickster alone but as a civilizing force, turning cunning into tools that benefit society when applied with wisdom. Hermes was often involved in playful contests of wits with other Olympians. One notable story tells of a debate between Hermes and Athena, goddess of wisdom, over who was cleverer. They set tasks for each other, from creating riddles to inventing strategies for resolving conflicts among mortals. Hermes, ever sly, used subtle tricks, illusions, and cunning speech, while Athena relied on strategy and foresight. At the end, both gods agreed that intelligence has many forms, and cleverness can be as vital as wisdom. The contest became legendary among the gods, emphasizing Hermes' skill in negotiation, subtlety, and creative problem-solving. On Mount Parnassus, a band of clever thieves had stolen sacred artifacts from the gods. Zeus called upon Hermes to recover them, but without violence. Hermes observed their actions, learning their tricks and devising counter-strategies. He left riddles and illusions in their path, confusing them and leading them into traps of their own making. Eventually, Hermes confronted them directly, offering a deal: return the stolen treasures and be spared if they pledged to use their skills for honest work. The thieves agreed, inspired by Hermes' cunning and fair approach. Through this myth, Hermes demonstrates that intelligence, persuasion, and strategy can solve problems more effectively than force, a recurring theme in his stories. Before Perseus set out to slay Medusa, he faced a nearly impossible task. The young hero lacked weapons capable of defeating the Gorgon, whose gaze could turn any mortal to stone. Hermes, watching from Olympus, decided to aid him, not with brute force, but with cunning and divine tools. Hermes appeared to Perseus, radiant and smiling, and handed him a polished bronze sword and a shield polished like a mirror. "Use this shield wisely," Hermes advised. "Do not look directly at Medusa, but through reflection, and you shall succeed." He also lent Perseus a pair of winged sandals, which allowed him to glide silently over cliffs and valleys, avoiding the lair of the Gorgons until he could strike. Hermes' guidance was subtle. He whispered strategies, encouraged patience, and taught Perseus to observe and plan rather than rush. The battle with Medusa was tense. Perseus, shield raised, moved with precision, guided by Hermes' teachings. When the Gorgon lunged, Perseus avoided her gaze and struck true, decapitating Medusa. Hermes' intervention saved the hero and demonstrated his role as protector of clever mortals, guiding them to succeed where force alone would fail. The caduceus, Hermes' staff, is a symbol of peace, negotiation, and diplomacy. Its creation is a story of observation, intelligence, and subtle magic. One day, Hermes saw two serpents fighting in the forest, twisting and biting each other endlessly. Rather than allowing them to destroy each other, he intervened. Hermes raised a staff and touched it gently to the serpents. Instantly, they coiled around the staff in perfect harmony, forming two spirals intertwined. The fighting ceased, and the serpents lay calm, intertwined yet balanced. Hermes lifted the staff high and declared, "Let this be a symbol of balance, wisdom, and mediation. Let it remind mortals and gods alike that conflicts can be resolved with cleverness, understanding, and patience." From that moment, the caduceus became his emblem, a symbol of negotiation, cunning, and the power to guide disputes toward resolution rather than destruction. Hermes was not only a messenger and trickster but also a bringer of knowledge. In one myth, mortals suffered in darkness, unable to control fire, which was wild and dangerous. Prometheus had gifted them some fire, but they could not master it fully. Hermes descended to teach them the proper use of fire, showing how to preserve it, carry it safely, and use it to cook, forge tools, and craft shelters. He also taught them how to combine fire with cunning, instructing mortals in strategic thinking and planning, ensuring they could defend themselves without relying solely on strength. Through this myth, Hermes emerges not only as a trickster but as a civilizing force, using intelligence, guidance, and skill sharing to elevate humanity. Hermes frequently guided heroes during critical moments, appearing when their cleverness or courage was needed most. One such tale involves Bellerophon, who sought to tame Pegasus, the winged horse. Hermes appeared in a dream and instructed him. Approach Pegasus gently, offer it a golden bridle, and show patience and confidence. Strength alone will fail you. Following Hermes' advice, Bellerophon approached Pegasus calmly. The winged horse, sensing wisdom rather than aggression, allowed itself to be bridled. This enabled Bellerophon to complete his heroic quests, including defeating the Chimera, a monstrous beast terrorizing the land. Hermes' role in guiding heroes consistently emphasizes the themes of intelligence, strategy, and clever intervention, proving that wisdom and subtlety often triumph over brute force. Even the gods themselves were not immune to Hermes' cleverness. Once, Aphrodite's magical girdle, which inspired love and desire, went missing. Suspicion fell on mortals and gods alike, causing turmoil among Olympus. Hermes, seeing an opportunity for a game of intellect, tracked the girdle not with force but with observation and subtle trickery. He discovered that it had been taken by a minor nymph, who had intended to use it for personal gain. Hermes approached the nymph with flattery and clever speech, convincing her to return the girdle voluntarily. When Aphrodite received it, she was impressed by Hermes' ingenuity. The story illustrates that even in matters of desire and divine influence, intelligence, subtlety, and persuasion are more powerful than coercion. Hermes occasionally intervened in the lives of mortals to ensure that fate was executed with precision. One story tells of a young king whose ambition threatened to destabilize an entire region. Hermes visited him in a dream, whispering choices and opportunities, subtly guiding the king's decisions. The king, unaware of divine influence, made choices that strengthened his kingdom and avoided unnecessary bloodshed. Hermes' unseen hand maintained cosmic balance, showing that cunning, subtle guidance, and intelligence could shape destinies without direct interference.